What's up, everyone? George Balekji here with Boston has entered the chat. But hey, check out the latest episode of the Hockey Hub wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime, or on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch as well. Hockey Hall of Famer Jeremy Roenick joined the show. He gave us his takes on the Four Nations tournament and also how he views both Brady and Matthew Tkachuk and how they play on the ice. That's Jeremy Roenick on the Hockey Hub, wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes dropping weekly. Check it out. Now, let's get to the chat. All right. Bring it in. It's Boston has entered the chat. George Balekji here with Kasey Hudson. Case, how we doing today?
We're good. I started off my morning in a hockey rink, and now I'm here chatting with you. We've got plenty of things to dive into, but I know you've been running around too. How are you doing?
Doing great. It's a jam-packed show. We got jam-packed sports we got going on as well. We're going to get right into the Four Nations final, USA, Canada, right off the bat, including Charlie McAvoy will not be able to play in the game. How does USA adapt? How does that affect the Bruins moving forward? We'll get into that. Then we also dive into the Red Sox being a suitor or just someone that Vlad Jr. is interested in, as he is eyeing free agency for next season. Then Alex Barth joins the show to talk about the future moving forward without Tee Higgins in the Patriots plan. And finally, Athan and Jason, as always, on this episode of The Chat, break down the latest from Netflix on Raw Netflix, excuse me there. But let's get right into it. It's USA-Canada case. It's for the title of the Four Nations tournament, all on the line. Now, USA, of course, beat Canada last time they matched up. 3-1 was the final. Two of the U.S. goals were even strength goals. The last one was an empty netter getting by Bennington. But USA dominated in Montreal, so all eyes fell to TD Garden in Boston for Thursday night. But big news, Charlie McAvoy will not play in the final. He was admitted to Mass General Hospital on Monday to undergo testing related to an upper body injury sustained during the tournament. That's per the Boston Bruins. He is seeing the team physician as well. And he will not play for Team USA in the championship on Thursday at TD Garden. In response, Mike Sullivan, the head coach for USA, called on Canucks star defenseman Quinn Hughes, also brother of Jack Hughes, of course, to travel to Boston as a potential replacement, but he cannot skate for US because when they broke camp and went to the tournament, he wasn't on the roster, and that's due to injuries of his own where he didn't make the initial roster. Case, what does it look like for Team USA moving forward in a matchup with Team Canada that's stacked with great skaters and a Team USA team that wants to play physical hockey, but now without one of their best skaters and one of their best defensemen in Charlie McAvoy?
Yeah, I feel like right now everybody's heads are spinning because when the news initially broke that McAvoy won't be involved, then it was like Quinn Hughes is on his way to Boston to be a part of X, Y, and Z. So it got a lot of hopes up, but then the logistics came into play where it's like, okay, you can't just jump on the ice and help these guys out in a championship game versus Canada. Now it's like somebody else has to get out of the mix-up being in the deep pairings in order to see Quinn Hughes on the ice. So where does that put us for the logistics part of sticking with what the USA team has? That means that they have to revert to what they went to on the other night versus Sweden. So luckily I was there, George, and I saw the deep pairings. They were pretty okay. Everything works out. When it comes to McAvoy, of course, he's a spectacular defenseman in a number of ways. He can jump in on the offense, but he's good at with blocking shots. He's good with keeping the puck in front of him and adding shots on goal. And Sanderson is in the mix, especially with Renetsky. So what's important here is the fact that Sanderson's really good at blocking shots too. He's the top defenseman for the Senators for a reason. He's been on the lead for the power play, the top power play unit. So there's a number of ways that he can get more involved and kind of help fill that void. But when it comes to going against a high offensive power team like Canada, I like the fact that Sanderson's defensive tactics and his ability to not get out of position and to be a really smart defenseman will come into play. We saw a few sloppy moments versus Sweden the other night, but I don't think that's going to be a challenge when it comes to Canada. And we all know Canada is just looking to take this to a whole nother level. So were you panicked when you found out that McAvoy wasn't going to be in the mix here?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's one of the best skaters on the ice. He's arguably the Bruins' best skater that they have on the team as well. And for how physical the U.S. played Canada when they beat them, they made it really difficult up the middle. And that's a credit to how their centers played, not just their blue liners, but everything was against the boards. And everyone knows that iconic moment. McAvoy sending Connor McDavid flying through the air, laying a big hit like that, setting the tone for the game. So that's a huge loss for Team USA along the blue line. But when I look at how good this team is down the middle, JT Miller, Jack Eichel, Dylan Larkin, Vincent Trocheck, Eichel's been playing fantastic, his 200-foot game throughout this whole tournament, but how difficult the centers made it play for the middle of the ice and take that away from Canada, allowing nothing easy through the neutral zone as well. It just, you weren't going to allow Connor McDavid to get on his full speed, full skate, and break away with the puck, except for his one goal. And look, nothing you could do about that. Great breakout by Jordan Binnington, finding McDavid there on the rush as well for a 1-2 pass leading to that goal. I'm worried for Charlie McAvoy. I'm worried more for the Bruins moving forward. But Team USA, you point out everything Sanderson brings. Hanifin, Fox are still a pairing that they have on the back end as well. And this is a Team USA team where you look at Hanifin, Eichel, Dylan Larkin, Tkachuk, Werenski. They've all played together going back to their development days with the USNDTP. Might have messed up that acronym, but we all know what it is. And that's what the U.S. has put together all those years ago to catch up, let alone surpass Canada in hockey. In this game, Case, I'm interested in your opinion. At the end of the day, Hellebuck's going to be back in goal. You were there against Sweden. They scored early. They got out in front. It was Kreider in the Garden from Eichel. Both the guys played college hockey here. And I feel like U.S. scored, and they kind of let up of, we're going to roll the Swedes. And this game doesn't matter. In Boston, Team USA, the local guys like Jack Eichel on this roster, how insane that building will be. I'm not worried about the U.S. for the environment, the atmosphere, the depth, and Connor Hellebuck, the goaltending, especially when Binnington's the opposite net.
Yeah, well, you mentioned something important. There was just some moments to the game versus Sweden where it's like, not that it didn't matter. It's not like they needed the points at that moment, but that's where they were able to be like, this is where we need precautionary. This is where we have to think ahead. This is where we, get some other guys some reps in the mix. I was talking to Jeremy Roenick about it because when the news came out about Matthew Tkachuk not being in there, he was like, what is this going to mean for USA? This is going to mean we're going to really see what that depth chart looked like. So I've talked about it a lot. Matt Boldy's a big guy in terms that I love his style of play and I love what he brings to the ice, and I feel like he's starting to get a lot more attention. But Sweden, we knew was going to be stacked when it came to the defensive side of this tournament, and that's what they showed versus USA. But you're going to get Matthew Tkachuk back. You're not going to have Brady in a precautionary sense. And deep pairing wise, I think that they did okay without McAvoy being in the mix. You said it. He's a great skater. He brings a lot to the ice, but they can't hyper focus on that. And I also think, like fans, we can't get so worked up in like, is Quinn Hughes going to play or not? So we kind of have to go based off of what we saw versus Sweden. But it's a whole different conversation when Hellebuck's in the net as well. The conversation between goalies and kind of the deep pairings playing in front of them can vary depending on your goaltender. And we know that Hellebuck is one strict guy to not let things slide past him. But the physicality is still going to be there, and just as much because guys got a little extra rest. More guys are going to be in the mix. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Austin Matthews because he helps a lot with zone entry. So I'm still very excited about what they can do. But from the beginning, USA being the most complete roster was one thing, but Adam and I talked about the fact that like USA's physicality helps push Canada off the puck, and I think that's what also helped limit their chances, and I think that they can bring that back in. It's funny though, because Travis and I were talking, like, what does this mean? Are we going to see 5 goals and below, or are we going to see 5 goals and above? Like, what do you think scoring wise is going to take place?
I think it has to be gritty. It has to be ugly. They have to muck it up. They have to play physical. And the only way the only way the USA can really have success is playing their game, Case. If it's a 5-4 final, that's you playing up to speed. And obviously USA has the skaters, but it's Connor McEffing-David. Like, no one can stop him when he's doing what he wants to do. This Canada team is so deep. Their power play is so scary, so relentless. They'll get Cale Makar. They'll have Nathan McKinnon. They'll be at full strength themselves. You have to play the same hockey, tough against the boards, and not let anything up the middle. It comes down to JT Miller and Trocheck. In my opinion, with the McAvoy out, they both have over 100 hits in the NHL season. Trocheck at 157. There's a physical play you get from guys like them. There's a speed play you get from Eichel and Larkin, all 200 foot. So I don't want to get cute with it. I think it's the same thing. I'll go 4-1 final, but I think it's empty netters at the end. So I think it's still going to be a 2-1, maybe 3-1 close. USA looks bigger, like they won by a bigger margin. I think it's going to be really tight in a 4-1. What do you think for the final, Casey?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a 1-goal separation. I wouldn't be surprised to see a 3-2 action. Canada's not going to be okay with the fact that they only picked up 1 goal on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And this power play unit and everything in the mix and getting Makar back out there, I feel like it's going to be one of those things where they're going to hit the power play box, but then they'll also pick up one on even strength that USA is going to be able to top it out. And I wouldn't be surprised if that goal squeaks through like somewhere under 5 minutes in the third period, because the relentless charge on the net that USA can do, but also they didn't have their same lines, so you saw them trying to mix things up a lot. But I just feel like it's going to come down close, just like you said, 1-goal game, and I'm hoping and thinking it's USA 3-2 at the end of it.
Hey, whatever you got to get it done on Wednesday. Lock it in Thursday night because that game's going to be absolutely outrageous no matter who's on the ice in Boston, at TD Garden, USA, Canada, and the Four Nations. Hey, for more on the Four Nations coverage, check out NESN's The Hockey Hub podcast. On the newest episode of Hockey Hub, Hall of Famer Jeremy Roenick joined the show to his takes on the Four Nations tournament and stories from his legendary career. Make sure to check it out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever else you get your podcasts. That's Four Nations coverage on NESN's The Hockey Hub podcast. All right, Case, let's get into it. So Vlad Jr. coming into spring training, the reports were, let's get an extension done now. I want to get paid a lot. But if you don't, for the Blue Jays, don't worry about it. I'm leaving next offseason. They didn't come to an agreement. No extension was made. He's expected to hit free agency next offseason. And you see it on your screen. When Vlad was asked if the Blue Jays were close, Vlad Guerrero Jr. said his one-word answer was no. He said he would re-sign in free agency and wants to be a Blue Jay for life. So that's what's interesting. But he also said that for now, he just simply wants to get paid. This is a guy that is owning the moment, creating leverage and saying, I want to be a Blue Jay for life, but I'm here from 29 other teams. His righty bat at Fenway, and all of that he said in the past, I like Boston, it looks good to me. His righty bat at Fenway, Casey, would be absurd. I mean, the guy hits absolute moonshots. His average is 390 feet to left, let alone 310 feet, which Fenway is. And he would just basically make them put a new roof on House of Blues. That's how many home runs he would hit. But he wants to get $500 million total value. That's what makes it interesting. What do you make of Vlad Jr. saying, I'm going to go to free agency, but also, hey, Boston, I got my eye on you. I'd like to play there as well.
Well, I think after the Bregman news last week and locking that in, I'm sure Red Sox fans would be like, yeah, bring him here. I mean, I've seen tweets before, bring Vladdy Daddy to Boston, all of these things. So I'm sure it would be a benefit. And you mentioned it, what he does and being able to do that in Fenway, adding that to the caliber of this roster would just be stupid. But I get nervous with these kind of things because it's one of those moments where the threat is out there and the money is kind of the finish line. The money is the focal point here. To turn down 380, what it was back in December, and looking to be north of 400, as you just mentioned, you've got to see a lot of other things come into play here. And then you got to wonder, was this just a threat for the Blue Jays to lock him in? Blue Jays have had their worst season this past year since 2019, but more importantly, his production was still there. So the money is well earned, but I feel a lot of this conversation might be revolving around the fact that when you see another athlete get paid like Soto and some other guys, you start wanting to kind of get into that category. And I feel the negotiations are going to get a little crazy outside of that. Don't you feel these Soto deals and stuff like that have kind of pushed the pencil on where these guys can land on the contracts?
Exactly. Juan Soto is, the best bat in baseball, let alone best left-handed bat. He's an okay outfielder at best, but that's a guy that you sign and you live with him being your designated hitter because he can be so dang good at the bat. He's the best hitter, point blank, period. But Vlad Jr. is not a Juan Soto. Yes, he's a righty. He's opposite of Soto. Yes, he hits a ton of home runs. He's had over 100 the last 4 seasons, 870 OPS. He's a 4-time All-Star. But the $400 to $500 million total, that's getting into first baseman contracts with the great bat, not DH contracts. And since 2018, he is last for qualified first basemen, for runs prevented, and last in outs above average as well. He's not a good fielder. So that's where he wants this big number, but he's a one-way player, and really his strength is his bat. And bats like his don't get $400 or $500 million. Juan Soto just reset the market all around. I see that $700 million, and he sees it and go, I'd be a bargain at 4. I'll hit the home runs. I'll get runs on the board. But I just don't think it's going to completely shift that way, especially Juan Soto, about to be 26, still not even in his prime, where Vlad is up there in age a few more years, and just Juan Soto is a more dynamic bat and give you just serviceable in the outfield, where Vlad is the worst by the metrics defensive first baseman in MLB.
Yeah, no, I couldn't disagree with that. That's exactly what I meant in terms of I just feel some of these market contracts are going to make these guys try to hold out, and he's going to have a better bargaining deal. I feel trying to reserve his spot with the Blue Jays and get him to pay him the money because he still helped the Blue Jays after a terrible season. 100 plus home runs and stuff, but then you've also got the fact that where else is going to pay that money? And I don't think the Red Sox are going to be that team because I think they're still trying to be strategic. And then the other week when we were talking with Devin, there's a lot of hope in the development for this Red Sox team. So Is it something that I'd be jumping at? Not particularly so, but I still think I've seen a number of fans. It's like, yeah, bring Vladdy to Boston. And for him to name Boston to want to be here, I feel like that's going to mix things up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's been the reports. We saw Bob Nightingale say Boston has emerged as the favorite to land Vlad Jr. as well, to get with the Red Sox. This is, I see it on the screen, 8.5 months from his free agency. So the Red Sox absolutely just crushed their offseason, and now the talks about the future offseason. But Kasey, with a lot of this, it's, all right, Vlad Jr., you want to come to Boston. Now this is the true, where does he fit? Tristan Casas right now is about to enter his third season playing for the Sox. Last season was lost to injury. When we've seen him as a full-time first baseman, he's been down there in outs above expected and runs prevented with Vlad Jr. Like, he's not the just good, let alone great defensive first baseman you want, but great bat, patient, has power, doesn't chase outside of the zone a ton, and just gets on base. Like, has everything you want in a professional hitter, but we've yet to see him, as injuries have affected him, put together. They could emerge as a favorite, but who is that saying that? Is that the Red Sox? I think that's Vlad Jr.'s agent. And by that drives up the Blue Jays of, we can't lose him to the division rival. This is the source game. This is Vlad. His priority is getting paid. His priority, in my opinion, right now is not to play in Boston. It's to get that payday. And he's going to use the Red Sox as leverage through reports to get paid by the Blue Jays or someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a driving force. I mean, to have the confidence to be up there and say they're going to compete with 29 other teams, and that's your closing statement, and that's the end of it. And I know that some of the conversation before the Bregman signing was like, Red Sox have the pockets for this. So I feel like that was also a tactic in a sense to say there's a team out there that we think can pay for this and think can afford this, and they would jump at the opportunity to work with me. Like, why not you? But 480, I think, is the last number I saw. Is that what you saw?
It's at 400. 400's too rich for me. But yeah, it's 400 to 500 million. Like 480, it's so much money. Look,
Yeah.
A lot of home runs, very powerful bat, is a game changer. But that's a lot of money. That's a lot for a DH. He's a guy that should be a DH.
If they brought him in, where do you think everyone would move around position wise? Like, what would make the most sense?
Man, we can't even get out of spring training with the lineup, let alone I got to think next season. But if you think of like a Christian Campbell's on track, say for Roman Anthony's ready to have a full season in the outfield, Sedane, Trevor, what's Rafi, what's Casas? That's like, if he was to come to Boston, you keep this roster as is. He's the DH in my opinion. He does not replace a Tristan Casas at first base. But it's just, there's so many ways that is when you truly have to figure out your lineup. He adds a lot of power, righty bat, perfect for Fenway, but it has to be perfect. And I think the price has to be perfect as well. Because keep in mind, if Christian Campbell's starting, he has a swing made for Fenway. Roman Anthony has to come further along on catching up or breaking balls in MLB. They got to get through spring training now. Man, throwing that on me, it's just, that's what gets all this churning. I have no idea to answer. Honestly, he's a DH, but then where's everyone else? I don't know, Case. I don't know.
No, I only threw that at you because I'm thinking to myself, that would be a lot of movement that would have to take place to bring him in, as well as spending the money on him. And I don't know that that's the smartest thing when you're thinking like big picture or long term. And I feel like that was kind of a theme with some things coming in. So it doesn't make sense. It's flattering that he's looking at Boston or using them as a bait switch in the contract negotiation. But I only put you in the hot seat because you made it make sense, George.
Some way, somehow, I did it. Hey, who should the Patriots target? Now Tee Higgins is franchise tagged. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, for more on Alex Bregman and the latest from Red Sox training camp, check out Spring Training. Check out Nesson's Baseball Podcast 310 to Left. You can find on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever else you get your podcasts. He's Alex Barth. You could catch him covering the Patriots for 98.5 The Sports Hub and across all platforms on social media as well. And my man Barth, he loves a draft. He loves offensive line talk. Barth, how we doing, brother?
I'm good. We're getting into the meat and potatoes of it. Combines next week, free agency 2 weeks after that, and then you got the month sprint till the draft. So it's, the off season's here. It's here in full. It's here in bulk, and we're gearing up. It's a fun time of year. I wish it mattered a little less around here, like it used to back in the day. But this is how you get there. You build the team these next couple of months, and that's how you play more meaningful football games in the fall.
There's nothing like going through a mock draft and sweating the 7th round pick and everyone giving me crap. And I go, look, it matters in this day and age. But let's start with, and I'm feeling for Patriots fans. I feel it myself. My heart got ripped out of my chest with Tee Higgins getting franchise tagged. I was impressed the Bengals are not going to be cheap. Either pay him $26 million or get an extension. What do you make of that news that Tee Higgins will be franchised, and where do the Patriots go from here, Alex?
So just really quick from a Cincinnati standpoint, it doesn't surprise me a ton. I said all year I didn't expect Tee Higgins to be available. This is a franchise that is in as good a position to win as they ever have been. And they have a true franchise quarterback. And we heard Joe Burrow campaigning for them to bring back not just Tee Higgins, but Higgins, Chase, and defensive end Trey Hendrickson as a package. And the Bengals, being the organization they are, they kind of have to listen to what Joe Burrow wants at this point. So it's not surprising to me that's going to happen. Now, it's really easy to sit here and say in mid-February before the Combine, we plan on extending him. Maybe those talks fall through down the road. Maybe there's just not a way to get it done. So if you're the Patriots, you keep checking in and you see where the progress is. Now you're going to have to trade for him on the tag rather than sign him, but you're still going to get him. But now the Patriots have to look elsewhere. And this is just another example of elite players at the wide receiver position do not hit free agency. You either have to draft them or trade for them. So you look elsewhere on the trade market, who are, the guys that we call pre-agents. A lot of these guys, they're not free agents. They're entering their contract year. A lot of them are going to want a new contract. They don't want to play on that uncertainty. So sometimes they will request a trade as leverage to get a new deal. This is what Brandon Ayuk did last year, and a lot of guys have done. At the top of that list, the pre-agents this year is DK Metcalf, who I've talked a lot about. Seattle might be going into a rebuild. They're kind of at a fork in the road here. Do you look to maybe make a move for him? There's been some questions about how happy A.J. Brown is in Philly. Is he somebody who's available? And then, of course, there's always a wild card. If I had told you at this time in 2022, in mid-February 2022, that Tyreek Hill was going to get traded, you would have called me nuts, and you should have. So sometimes these things come out of nowhere, but they're going to have to monitor the trade market. If not, that top-tier coverage dictating wide receiver really isn't going to be available to the Patriots this offseason. And then it's about how do they pivot. And, we'll get into some of this, but they have more than one need. So do you hammer the offensive line? Do you hammer the defensive front? Get a couple of wide receivers who are complementary players who are going to raise the level. And now next year you have a more complete roster. You can allocate more assets towards wide receiver in what projects to be a better year for the position. Or do they say, no, we need to add this. We've been trying to add this for too long. And do they get really aggressive and go for a guy that is the top of the class this year, either in free agency or the trade market, even if he's maybe not the same level of player?
Who do you see those guys as the top of the class? There's Chris Godwin coming off a very severe ankle injury, same leg where he tore his ACL too. Amari Cooper, 30 and older. Stephon Diggs, torn ACL. DeAndre Hopkins only played 50% of the snaps once he was traded to Kansas City, and he's 33. And then there's Tyreek Hill. He said, I'm out. Then he said, I'm sorry. Cooper Kupp wants more money. Deebo Samuel wants to get traded. So who do you see as those guys that are top of the list, free agency or pre-free agent, like you say, that maybe the Patriots trade for?
I think Chris Godwin is at the top of my list. He's a low, I hate doing the whole number one thing, but in terms of a guy you're going to force a defense to focus on, he's not a guy that defenses can just play straight up. At least that's who before he got hurt last year. There's some risk there with the injury, and that's why he's in this next tier. If they were to add Godwin, to me, it'd probably be on a short-term deal, kind of prove it deal. He's 28 years old. Like, that would make some sense to me. And it's okay, you've addressed it probably as much as you can realistically address the position this offseason. Some of those other guys you named, like Hopkins, Cooper, they just didn't produce last year. I think it's probably too late. Some of those other guys, too, on the trade market, like Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, if you add them in addition to another wide receiver, right? If Tee Higgins were available, or you add them too if you make a trade for a guy like DK Metcalf, that makes all the sense in the world. If that's your big wide receiver addition, though, I don't think those guys change a ton. So I'm looking at Godwin right now as probably their best option. One other guy that's interesting to me, he's in the last year of his deal. There's some rumblings he could be, cap casualty, and that's Christian Kirk in Jacksonville. If he gets cut, or if you can trade for him for, a day 3 pick. Again, not going to totally revolutionize the offense, but a guy that fits in Josh McDaniel's scheme, and he'll give you something. He'll improve that group. And now maybe next year, if you have a chance to add that guy at the true top of the depth chart, Kirk is going to be somebody who's going to play really well as a, as some people say, like a Robin to somebody else's Batman.
Another Robin we could throw out there, Darius Slayton from the Giants will be 28, 6'1", 200. Or also, what do you make of, you mentioned cap casualties, Devontae Adams. Still producing at his age, still put up numbers with the Jets, how bad that offense was. But I can't ignore, obviously, the past experience he has where he played for Josh McDaniels in Vegas.
I'm generally pretty wary of wide receivers over 30. If they are going to add one of those guys, Adams is at the top of the list for me because, like you said, he doesn't look like a 30-year-old wide receiver right now, and he had some of his best, he has some experience, I should say, under Josh McDaniels. So, yeah, he would make sense. Now, he's maybe more in that lead category as well. It's just, again, you're taking the risk on the age, and this is a guy that has played for bad teams the last few years, and he's in the twilight of his career. Does he want to go somewhere where he can win? Does he want to go somewhere where he's going to have a chance to put up big numbers and maybe get one last big contract? I think he's a guy that might be a little bit tougher of a sell to get to come here. The Jets aren't trading him to you. Like, I would be shocked if that was an in-division trade. So he's going to probably have to get cut for the Patriots to have a shot at him. And then from there, it's, can you win the negotiations?
Now, we go back. I want to go back to that DK Metcalf that you mentioned. You love him. You absolutely love him. Yeah. I don't blame you. I would love him in a Patriots uniform. He's going to be 28. He wants to get paid. But A.J. Brown, around the same age when he was traded for by the Eagles, that prompted a first-round pick. Stephon Diggs, 27 years old. That prompted a first-round pick. I don't think DK Metcalf's in that same tier of just as Stephon Diggs, but he is a game changer. He would be for the Patriots. Yeah. What could you see is that trade price and then also the extension price we could see for DK Metcalf?
So the extension's the easier one. He's not going to get paid what Justin Jefferson is, but he's going to want to be a top 5 paid receiver in the league. Patriots are ready to do that for Brandon Ayuk last year. There's no reason they shouldn't be ready to, and it's going to cost a little more relative to Ayuk because we're, another year ahead here, but I would, and I'd pay him that money. I'd make him a top 5 paid receiver in the league, and to extend the Ayuk comp for the compensation, I would run that package back. I think they're similar players, so that was a second, a fourth, and Kendrick Bourne. I don't know that Seattle's going to want Kendrick Bourne. That was kind of a unique thing where Bourne had been in San Francisco, but if that's like another fourth, right? So call it a 2, a 4, and a future 4, something like that. That should get it done. I don't think you're going to have to trade a first for DK Metcalf. I know A.J. Brown, in that scenario, he was, like you said, I think Metcalf maybe in this scenario is worth a little bit less. Brown was younger at that point. But if it's, look, I'll put it this way. Patriots sitting at 38 in the second round, right? Are you drafting a wide receiver better than DK Metcalf at 38? Mm-hmm. Probably not. And if it's just day 3 picks on top of that, and look, they have 2/3. If you have to throw in the Matthew Judon third to get it across the finish line, or maybe they trade back and add picks and use those to get Metcalf, like, I think it would be doable. It's a matter of, is Seattle going to take that step to move him? Which I could see the path to it. We don't know for sure one way or the other, but it does look similar to some of these other wide receivers that have entered the trade block in recent years. And then it's about him accepting the deal. And I know that there's some quotes out there about him saying he maybe wouldn't love to live in Massachusetts. It's easy to say that until there's $30-something million a year staring you in the face. And that tune change real quick. So I'm not ruling it out yet. I don't know that it's, at the top of the board of the most likely things to happen, but the way these things have gone in the past, the players in Metcalf's situation have become available, and we saw the Patriots chase him last year. Ayuk, Ridley was a little different. He was a free agent, but they chased him. If they're going hard after those guys, if Metcalf becomes available, it would make sense that they'd go hard after him too.
Hey, I love that tone that you're saying of, he said the quotes, you give him 4 years, 80 million guaranteed fully, 50 million at signing. That guy's going to love living in Massachusetts. And Barth, you're a South Shore guy. You'll know where to take him to get him inclined and to love the area, of course, especially around Foxborough. So you listed out, and by the way, you're right. A.J. Brown is 25. DK will be 28. But you also mentioned the rebuild through the draft. And I love you throughout the picks. There's 2/3 the Patriots have to work with. You give up a second, it can all work. What do you see them doing in the first? What do you want to see them do in the first? How would you go about this if you're running this draft for the Patriots?
So it's tough, man. I put out my first mock draft of the year last week, and I wrote about this in there. It's the toughest mock draft I've done in, however many years doing this, because like last year we knew quarterback, and you could debate the quarterbacks, but we knew quarterback. The year before that, it was like tackle, corner, receiver. There were 3 positions, and you kind of knew, and you had an inkling based on free agency. Depending on how free agency goes, depending on how the combine goes, like Will Campbell's arm length is a huge factor here. March 2nd, mark your calendars, Patriots fans. That's when he gets measured. Like, there's so many different ways they can go. It's hard to say. As things stand right now, I like Ted McMillan. I don't know that he's quite that guy. So as much as there's no receivers in free agency, I think Ronnie Stanley's going back to the Chargers. I wouldn't be surprised if Alaric Jackson ends up back in LA. Like, are they going to have a chance to add that tackle to protect Drake May's blind side? I don't know if that guy's going to be there in free agency. I believe in building out the line before you add the receiver. I think Will Campbell can be a set it and forget it, 10 plus years quality starting left tackle in this league. If his arms are long enough, to me, he's the pick at 4. If not, it gets a lot more complicated. I don't think Abdul Carter's going to be there. I don't think Travis Hunter's going to be there. I don't love Mason Graham's a good player. I don't love the idea of a defensive tackle at 4. Only 2 defensive tackles have gone in the top 5 since 2011, and neither of their teams ended up benefiting much from that pick. It's Quinnen Williams and Marcel Darius. Good players, but didn't really help the team, right? So now you're probably looking to move back. March 2nd is going to tell us a lot with Will Campbell's arm length, and then free agency is going to tell us a lot. But if Campbell is a tackle, I think he's the pick.
All right, I like it. You have Will Campbell going number 4 overall. That was your latest mock draft that you put out. Whenever they're measuring his arms too, I'm going to watch NFL Network to see just how close you get with the magnifying glass to the measuring tape for when they get out the arm length. What about, take me through this. They're sitting at 4. Hunter and Carter are gone. A quarterback would be sitting there if they both go top 3. Patriots trade back, stay in top 7, accrue more picks, maybe another second rounder. See, a lot can happen after giving up a second for DK Metcalf. I'm kind of going low fantasy land here too. But sitting in that top 7, if it's a Shamar Stewart, a Mike Green, maybe a Ted McMillan, or maybe a trade back and Will Campbell still falls to them at 7, or it could be a Kelvin Banks. You never know. Yeah,
I mean, a trade back's obviously a very attractive possibility for them. And some of the guys you named, if you're getting other picks, now, I'm more comfortable with McMillan, Mason Graham. If we're going to talk about pass rushers, you mentioned a couple good guys there, but I like Michael Williams from Georgia or Jalen Walker from Georgia. Walker can play some off the ball too. Those guys might make sense in that range. If they really move down and really get a haul, talking to 9 with the Saints, who might be a quarterback team, does Tyler Warren from Penn State come into play? Maybe not their biggest need, but just a really good player. And at that point, are you just trying to add, he might be the best player on the board at 9, regardless of positional value. So if they can move down, then it opens it up a little bit more. You mentioned those trades. The one I look at, I know a lot of people use the trade chart, which has value, but what I like to do is look at trades that happened in the past. And, what is the equivalent? In 2018, when the Colts moved up from 6-3, I think it was 6-3, or moved down from 6-3. With the Jets for Sam Darnold. I butchered that, but you get the trade. It was moved down 2 seconds that year and a future second. So no future first. There is no team this year with 2 seconds. But if you look at the Raiders, if you move down to 6, you get their second and a future second. You're getting 1 less pick, but it's a smaller move and a weaker draft. Now you're picking at 37 and 38. Having those 2 picks back to back, there's a million different places you can go from there. So, would the Raiders take that deal? They'd have to really like Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward, whoever falls. I know there's some Jackson Dart buzz. I don't know why, but there is. But that's the trade I look at. If that trade's on the board, where you get the Raiders second and a future second, that I think might be the overall best case scenario. And you still might be able to get Campbell at 6, and if not, some of the other guys that you mentioned would certainly be there.
Hey, Alex, I love it all, man. Wheels are churning up there. We're talking about trade backs, and actually makes sense in this draft. Long off season for the Patriots ahead. My man, thank you so much for coming out. Boston has entered the chat. We'll make sure I'll bring you back on after the NFL Combine. And let me know the exact measuring tape that you mark Will Campbell's arms with.
Oh, we'll know. It will be plastered everywhere. That is the biggest number coming out of the Combine is Will Campbell's arm measurement. So I don't think it'll be on the sides of buses. It'll be on billboards. You won't be able to miss it.
Hey, he's Alex Barth, Patriots reporter, and you can catch him hosting Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff on 98.5 as well. Barth, thanks for taking the time, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Shout out Alex Barth for joining the show. Thank you to him. Now, check out the latest Ringside review. Jason and Athan breaking down the latest from Raw on Netflix.
Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Ringside Review. I am Athan Hristodulu, joined alongside, as always, by Nesson.com writer Jason Ounpraseuth. We're talking Monday Night Raw. We're also going to sprinkle in some Elimination Chamber discussion. Plenty to get into after another eventful Monday night. But first, Jason, before we get things rolling, I need to give you some credit here. Major props on you for calling out Ricky Starks, literally jumping onto NXT the night that we discussed this. Shout out to you on that one. That was a fantastic call. What do you think of his debut? I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, kind of an interesting timing for that because I assumed he had that typical 90-day no compete clause. I guess he didn't, and so it turns out he might not actually have a name. That was kind of interesting. Kind of teased
Yeah,
his name wasn't Ricky Starks, and so I could tell probably this is probably a last minute kind of thing. So probably something to watch week to week, probably.
definitely. I thought it was a little interesting with the way, because the only reason I knew this even happened was because I saw a WWE tweet out, "He's here," and everyone's like, "Who's here?" And so naturally, I'm like, "All right, NXT's going on. Let's see what's happening." Sure enough, Ricky Starks is out there. He's cutting a promo. Nobody's saying his name, and he even himself, "You all know who I am," or at least it seems like they do. So that was some awesome stuff. I had to give you props on that. I thought that was hilarious. Literally, first thing I thought of when I was watching it came to my mind. But Monday Night Raw, a lot happened. A little more progression on Gunther and Jey Uso. We got some clarity on what's going on between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Elimination Chamber matches have finally been settled. We'll start with Owens and Zayn because this is something that you and we discussed a little bit last week. And I'll be honest, I don't want to say I was down on it, but I wasn't excited for it. But now, after seeing the way this has been framed a little bit, and we're heading into Elimination Chamber with it being an unsanctioned match, I actually think there's some room to really tell a bit of a story here because with Zayn, the way he talked last night about it, it was more of a personal type of thing. You could look at the way Owens kind of always got one up on him as a way to progress his career prior to this, but now it's more personal. He was trying to hurt Zayn, so I like the angle that they're kind of take here, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it because it adds a wrinkle, and I saw the way you wrote this out in the notes here, and I'm going to spin an idea to you in a second, but I just want to hear your overall thoughts. Unsanctioned, in Toronto, Elimination Chamber, how you feeling about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of kind of odd that this wasn't a WrestleMania match. It kind of just feels like, especially like you said, how personal this all is. It kind of feels ripe for WrestleMania, but also these guys are Canadian, and so it's kind of makes sense for these guys to have a big match in Canada, and especially with that crowd. I mean, WrestleMania crowds are awesome in itself, but still, a Canadian crowd with these, Canadian, I guess, sons or heroes, however you want to describe them. That's definitely what they have to do. The unsanctioned aspect of this is interesting. I was kind of researching of like how many unsanctioned matches there were, and the past couple have been kind of lackluster. I don't know how much you looked into this, Athan, but one of them that stood out was a Drew McIntyre Jey Uso unsanctioned match from SmackDown in 2020. This was during the Thunderdome era, and so kind of a grain of salt, but still, like it just seemed kind of weird. I guess maybe not weird, but still, WWE doesn't have a great track record of unsanctioned matches, to say the least.
Yeah, I think some of that might be in part due to just like the PG nature that WWE has had over the last decade and a half, 20 years now, however long it's actually been since they've gone that way. But also maybe just not necessarily the right people going against each other in an unsanctioned match. Because like even off the top, just hearing Jey Uso versus Drew McIntyre without any other frame of reference, it does not intrigue me. But with the relationship and story that these two guys have together, I'm a little more bought in on this because my theory with this now here, because I love spitting these theories out when we do this, is that this unsanctioned match could potentially lead to something, because I noticed in your notes, you said curious why this isn't like WrestleMania and why it's being in Toronto, which obviously Toronto makes a lot of sense. It potentially goes no contest. It's so personal. These guys are so willing to beat each other down to the very end that maybe it goes no contest, no decision type deal. It ends with just neither of them being able to continue. And it's something that they turn into, we get a bigger blow off, maybe a last man standing, maybe a Hell in a Cell, something like that we kind of speculated on last week at WrestleMania. So maybe it's like a stepping stone to what is the eventual blow off. But having them in Toronto, in my eyes, it does make a ton of sense. But that's probably the angle I think they could take it if they want to have this at both Elimination Chamber, where they're both from, plus being able to have this catapult into WrestleMania as a big final blow off where they can hopefully settle this score and we don't have to revisit this again in another year or two down the road.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it really depends on the competitors, and these guys are, every time they've been in the ring, they've always delivered. And like some of the other ones, I was kind of just picking out the bad ones, but some of the good ones were in NXT, like Kyle O'Reilly against Adam Cole, and Gargano and Ciampa also had an unsanctioned match also, and so those were actually some of the better unsanctioned matches. I'm kind of interested, I guess, how they would execute that idea of yours, Athan. Like if, like you said, WWE is kind of in this PG era, in this little like Paul Levesque Triple H era, they've kind of leaned I guess, against some of the PG nature. And so if they do it right in terms of maybe a double knockout or no contest, like you said, I can maybe buy into that. But I'm very curious about the execution of your idea if they actually go through with that.
Yeah, my thought is probably some major spot that leaves them both just lying there, and it's one of those things where maybe Adam Pearce comes running out because he sounded so concerned booking the whole thing last night that it ends up just being, we got to stop this. Like, I know I said I couldn't stop it, but like we have to stop this kind of situation, and then it just leads to the eventual meeting one more time at Mania where we get like an official, this is how we wrap it type of deal. The other thing that we got to discuss, because we talked about it last week, and I think it still kind of holds a little bit of weight here. The build between Gunther and Jay. I think it's poetic that I'm sitting here now complaining about the build back-to-back weeks after saying I was okay with Jay winning the Rumble, because I don't feel like we're really getting anywhere other than just seeing in some different way, recycled version of Gunther intimidation, Jey Uso showing he's not afraid. And we have about 2 months until WrestleMania, just about, honestly, a day away from that. And how many more times can we see Gunther come out, say he doesn't take Jay seriously? Last night, obviously, making fun of Jay with the entrance, basically intimidating him, and then Jay coming out and showing, I have no fear of you. I need a new direction for this, because again, I'm interested in the idea of Jay winning the Rumble and them going against the grain of picking a more logical option, but the execution is not quite there, and it's just kind of disappointing me to this point.
Yeah, it seems like a weird inverse of our earlier discussion with Owens and Zayn. I felt like that feud could have built to WrestleMania. Instead, they're doing their Elimination Chamber. This one kind of feels like they're building to Elimination Chamber with not actually building to WrestleMania. It's like, it's a weird kind of thing. Like you said, like, what else can they do after this for like 2 months? Like, the best scenario I can see is probably like an injury angle, probably to Jey Uso. I would be hesitant against that because I feel like WWE really values that entrance and just having that on Netflix every week. And so I don't know if they want to risk having Jay not be on TV, or I guess on streaming, or however you want to describe it, just for multiple weeks at a time. I think they do want Jey Uso on every week. And so, like you said, I don't know how they're going to do this, but it's been pretty shaky so far, even though I did thoroughly enjoy Gunther's parts of his, I guess, part of the feud.
Yeah, I saw your note about not being the biggest fan of Pat McAfee. I love the little intimidation angle they had going on there between them. That honestly interested me more than anything else, because I'm like, is Pat McAfee going to somehow get involved in this? Like, what are we doing right here type of deal? But again, it for me, it's not. I don't want to sit here and say it's not good. It's just I want to see more than just what feels like recycled versions of the same thing being done in a slightly different light, I guess, to this point. But I'm hopeful that maybe over the next few weeks we start to see some differentiation of how they're going to build this matchup. The next thing I wanted to bring up to you, because this is something that I think is really starting to come to a head, the Judgment Day. Tensions are high. Everyone lost. It was a clean 0-3 sweep for them. Finn Balor is hard-knowing Dom Mysterio about adding another member. Raquel lost to someone who is literally maybe a third of her size. And Finn Balor, in one of the biggest moments he's had in quite some time, came up short and ultimately lost to Seth Rollins. Are we seeing an eventual split here? Because it feels like this group is fractured and is only getting worse. And I think it's interesting that we see Damian Priest and then, of course, Rhea Ripley as well both leave. It seems like they were almost the glue to this group, even while Rhea was gone. And they're just falling to completely apart to this point here. And I don't know how the collapse works, if maybe we end up getting a Dom versus Finn angle or something like that. But I know that there was a moment in time where WWE was teasing, like maybe it wasn't Dom that Liv Morgan, blanking on her there, Liv Morgan was interested in. Maybe it was more so Finn Balor because they have a history with the mixed tag team competition. Like maybe they throw some sort of wrench in that way, but just where are we going with the Judgment Day at this point? Because they have literally nothing going for them. And again, 0-3 sweep last night. Everyone lost.
Yeah, especially since next week you have Liv and Raquel going for the tag titles against Bianca and Naomi, and also Liv in the Elimination Chamber as well. And so I think we could see more piling losses for them, and like you said, more of a fracturing of the Judgment Day. And I do agree with you. Rhea and Damian Priest were the glue to that faction, because after they left, Dominic, he's just more of a comedy act at this point. He's not really there as a serious wrestler. I know he had that match against AJ, but still, like, no one's really expecting AJ to lose in his first match back in like nearly a couple months to Dominic Mysterio. And so we could probably see Finn and Dom go at it. And I could see maybe they want to build Dominic as a more, I guess, serious competitor if they want to do that. I mean, they have to do something with him at some point, you would think, especially given like how much reaction he gets from the crowd. And so I could definitely see some sort of blow off angle at WrestleMania. Not sure how they do it, especially since like everyone else, like Carlito, is also a comedy act at this point, also. And so I don't really see how logically they could get there, but I think they will eventually get there with Finn, possibly in some type of WrestleMania match against either maybe both Carlito and Dominic if they want to do that.
Yeah, I feel like this might be gearing up for something like that, and it seems like the tension between Dom and Finn is starting to build. And honestly, for the sake of just adding some spice to the whole situation, it would be insane if they maybe did go the angle of like maybe Liv Morgan ultimately turns on Dom and runs off with Finn, and they start doing an angle together, something like that. But it definitely feels like we are heading towards. And this is a faction that has been around for what feels like the better part of 2 or 3 years now, but like what feels like an eventual complete and utter split that has seen a lot of face changes from the Edge era to being led by Rhea and Damian to now both of them are gone, and it's just, I guess, Finn and Dom trying to lead the way with Carlito's antics, and of course now Liv Morgan doing her thing on the side with them as well. Quick note, because you did mention AJ Styles, something I did not know I was going to be excited for, and I'm really looking forward to, AJ Styles, Braun Breaker. I'm all in. I'm sold. I think those two are going to have an incredible match. I'm really hoping we get something good at Elimination Chamber and maybe even again at WrestleMania. That's a match I did not know I wanted, but WWE's teasing it, and I'm here for it.
I'm with you as well. I've been kind of warming up to Braun Breaker as a in-ring guy. He's kind of, obviously very green. He does have that pedigree of the Steiner family, but still he was very green, coming off from football and, doing the NXT Performance Center kind of thing. But I think he's really grown as a competitor. He's got a ton of charisma. His bank skills have gotten better, at least as much as has gained more reps on the mic. And so working with AJ, seasoned veteran, one of the best in-ring guys of all time, definitely a very good guy to really get his seasoning in, especially on a big stage of WrestleMania, if that is the match that they're going with.
Absolutely. I think, and especially the crowd getting behind him, the barking is getting louder and louder each week for Braun. And I love that he stayed away from the Steiner name, and he's really grinding in his own image, and it's honestly working out far better than I thought it was going to. And each and every week, I feel like I'm walking away more and more impressed. Now, one last thing before we go and send people off: Elimination Chamber is officially set for the chamber matches. We got all 6 women, we got all 6 men. I would like to hear just your overall thoughts. We're going to make our predictions next week, but I want to hear your thoughts on the competitors and just the groupings. Who do you feel is like a part of the match for their spots more than anything else? Who has a logical chance to win? For the women's side on my end, I have Alexa Bliss, I have Bayley, and I guess Liv Morgan, but after last night, I'm feeling less Liv Morgan and leaning more towards the fracturing of Judgment Day. Her taking another loss is kind of there for me in that. And I really am just leaning Alexa Bliss or Bayley. For the men's side, I genuinely don't know. And I know you're high on Cena and heading to WrestleMania against Rhodes, so I'll let you kind of dive in on that. But for me, I mean, I look at Drew McIntyre as a wild card, but Cena, Punk, or Rollins are the main 3 for me in my eyes.
Yeah, sort of similar boat as you with the women's side. I think Bayley and Alexa Bliss seem like the most logical choices. Like you said, Liv Morgan kind of seems like she's got her storyline with Bianca Belair and Naomi. Especially for Bianca Belair, it doesn't really feel like they have anything for her, which is, like I sort of mentioned in the notes here, like it's kind of booking malpractice. Like, how do you not have anything for Bianca Belair except for a tag title scene? But it doesn't really seem like they want to elevate her anytime soon, and so Bayley makes the most sense. For the men's side, I mean, I'm all in on the Cena angle. I think for the other competitors like Logan Paul, I think he's just specifically there for the spots for that kind of category there. But I'm really into this John Cena Cody Rhodes feud, at least the potential feud. I think they really want to spice up Cena's last finale. And I think the best way to do that, in my opinion, at least, Athan, is a title match against Cody Rhodes, one of the big stars of the company. And so I feel like that's just the perfect recipe there, having a final win in Toronto and picking up a title chance at least. I don't know if he's gonna actually go win the title, but still having a chance to compete for that at WrestleMania seems like the best way for him in his final year as a full-time competitor.
Definitely. I feel like I maybe am warming up to the Cena versus Rhodes angle. I think there's a lot they can do with it. The more I talk about it out loud with other people too, I feel like I'm starting to spin some possible narratives they could go with. But we'll have to see, I guess. All 6 competitors, both men's and women's, are set. Again, we'll predict next week, so make sure you tune in next week in the Ringside Review so you can hear who we think is coming home with the championship opportunities at WrestleMania. But as always, if you made it to the end, greatly appreciate it, Jason. Thank you for joining me once again for another edition of Ringside Review, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you to Jason and Athan. Shout out Alex Barth for joining the show as well. Case, a fun one. It is just the best. Somehow, some way, it's like the best time of year for sports. And I just got to thank the Four Nations for that, because end of the day, hockey's doing a lot of heavy lifting right now. And I know you love it.
Oh my gosh, I'm the biggest fan of it. And the best part about it is just seeing everyone in Boston be such a hockey head for the week, and even further than that, and seeing the people that flew in for Sweden, the people that flew in for Finland, like the support all around and just the love for hockey. It's been tremendous. The atmosphere has been insane, but we know who has to try to come on top with this one. So fingers crossed, we got something to look forward to, George.
Hey, it's all USA for us over here. Hopefully they bring it home. I think they will. She's Kasey Hudson. I'm George Balekji. This was Boston Has Entered the Chat. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Catch new episodes every Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.